In February of 2004, the WB network pulled the plug on a television show that was actually pulling better ratings than the year before, and the creator compared it to a healthy guy dropping dead from a heart attack. At the same time, buried in a box of old production photographs, evidence of a completely different ending to another beloved series collected dust for over 2 decades until someone purchased it on eBay. The finales we grew up with, the ones we argued about at the office and ugly cried over on our couches, almost never happened the way we remember them. Behind every iconic TV goodbye sits a graveyard of abandoned scripts, network meddling, and in a few cases, fully filmed alternate versions that never aired. Today we are counting down 10 classic shows that came within inches of ending completely differently. We're talking real alternate footage that was actually shot, network executives who admitted years later that they blew it, and a misspelled title card that turned a hopeful cliffhanger into one of the bleakest farewells in television history. If this sounds like your kind of deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe before we get rolling. You're going to want to be here for what comes next, so let's get into it. Number 10. The X-Files. When The X-Files aired its original run finale on May 19th of 2002, a two-parter called The Truth, only 13.25 million viewers showed up, making it the lowest-rated season finale in the show's run. Chris Carter wrote and directed it, and what landed on screen that night was not the full version he'd shot. A scene was filmed featuring the cigarette-smoking man's henchman, known as Toothpick Man, and played by Alan Dale, handing a note to a George W. Bush impersonator. That note tied the show's alien conspiracy directly to the sitting president. Carter cut it before broadcast, and the scene only survived as a special feature on the Region 1 and Region 2 DVD releases. What makes The X-Files finale a story about alternate endings isn't just one deleted scene. Carter himself acknowledged after the broadcast that the show lost its audience at the start of Season 9 and that he couldn't figure out how to get them back. Production blamed the September 11th attacks for the ratings collapse, while critics pointed to weak writing as the real problem. Either way, the finale Carter delivered was shaped by a show that had been bleeding viewers for 2 full seasons. The original mythology was supposed to build toward a specific date, December 22nd of 2012, when alien colonization would begin. Carter announced plans for a second feature film as early as November of 2001, a full year before the finale aired, and that film eventually became 2008's I Want to Believe. A planned third movie centered on the colonization date never materialized, and the 2012 storyline was ultimately replaced by the 2016 Season 10 miniseries. The ending we got in 2002 was never meant to be the real ending. Just a placeholder for a conclusion, Carter kept pushing into the future until the original vision disappeared entirely. Number 9. Roseanne. Where The X-Files suffered from a show that had slowly lost its way, Roseanne's was a planned demolition from the start. Season 9 had already gone sideways with the Connors winning the lottery and traveling the world, and the show barely resembled itself anymore. What came next, on May 20th of 1997, was Roseanne Barr sitting down in front of 16.57 million viewers and delivering a 15-minute monologue that detonated the entire series. Every season of the show, she revealed, had been a novel that Roseanne the character was writing, and she'd changed the details along the way. Jackie was actually gay. The husbands were paired with opposite daughters in reality, and Dan had died of his heart attack at Darlene's wedding. He'd been dead the whole final season while the audience watched a fiction within a fiction. None of this was improvised. Barr had taken over the writing duties, and this ending was always the endgame. Time magazine called it loopy. The AV Club described it as either making excuses or amends for the preceding season, and TV Guide Network eventually ranked it number 9 on their most unforgettable finales list. What makes this story even stranger is that the ending kept getting reversed and reinstated. ABC's 2018 revival brought Dan back to life, with the network's entertainment president declaring he was definitely alive. That changed when Barr was fired, the show became The Connors, and Roseanne's character died of an opioid overdose, proving the original finale's darkest point all over again. You can't keep pretending death didn't happen. Number 8. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Joss Whedon wrote and directed the Buffy the Vampire Slayer finale, Chosen, which aired on UPN on May 20th of 2003. And the ending he delivered was not the only version he mapped out. A leaked storyboard that surfaced on Buffy forums shows a different climactic sequence in which a helicopter retrieves Buffy from the collapsing Sunnydale High School, with some panels appearing to depict Angel, or possibly Riley Finn, participating in the rescue. Whedon chose the school bus exit instead, and the reasoning came down to the show's core message. Having Buffy get rescued by someone else in her own series finale would have undercut the empowerment theme that the entire 7-year run was built on. Several key elements of the finale were late additions that could have gone differently. Sarah Michelle Gellar later mentioned that the scythe weapon was added to the story late in the process. The amulet that ultimately destroyed Spike was a cross-promotional device tied to Angel's 5th season, meaning one of the finale's most devastating moments existed partly because of a spin-off storyline rather than organic planning. Whedon spoke about the finale on the episode commentary, saying he wanted viewers to laugh, cry, and gasp with excitement while also walking away with what he called a beautiful feminist message. The ending he chose delivered on that, but the storyboard tells a different story, one where Buffy needed saving at the finish line, instead of walking away from the crater on her own terms. Number 7. The Sopranos. Debuting in 1999 and wrapping in 2007, The Sopranos sits right on the edge of this era, and its alternate ending is not a rumor because creator David Chase confirmed it himself. About 2 years before the finale aired, Chase's original plan involved inverting the show's opening credits. Every episode began with Tony driving from New York into New Jersey, and the last scene would have flipped that image, showing Tony heading back through the Lincoln Tunnel into Manhattan for a meeting where he was going to be killed. A mirror image of the show's signature sequence, designed as the final book end. Chase abandoned it because the drive toward that meeting telegraphed Tony's death too clearly. What replaced it was the Holston's diner sequence with the gathering family, the suspicious stranger, Journey playing on the jukebox, and then a sudden cut to black that had millions of viewers checking their cable connections. During a conversation with television critics, Chase referred to the diner scene as that death scene, and then immediately tried to walk the comment back. He told The Hollywood Reporter separately that what really bothered him was how many viewers simply wanted to watch Tony get killed. The Lincoln Tunnel version would have handed them exactly that, and the diner version refused to, which is what turned it into one of the most debated endings in television history. Number 6. Dallas. Dallas didn't almost have a different ending. It had several, kept trying to undo them, and accidentally invented a storytelling trick that would haunt television for years. The Who Shot JR cliffhanger from March 21st of 1980 is the most famous example, and the 8-month wait before the answer aired wasn't purely a creative choice. A SAG actors strike and Larry Hagman's contract renegotiation dragged things out, and to keep his options open, producer Leonard Katzman filmed multiple versions of the shooting with different cast members holding the gun. Patrick Duffy explained in a 2025 interview that every character had a reason to pull the trigger, so everybody took a shot at JR on camera. When the resolution finally aired on November 21st of 1980, 83 million people watched, earning a 53.3 rating with a 76 share. And that's when the real disaster arrived. After Duffy left and Bobby was killed off, he eventually agreed to come back, which left the writers with a problem they couldn't solve gracefully. Their fix was the infamous Dream Season reveal in the September 1986 premiere, where Pam wakes up to find Bobby alive in the shower and the entire previous year of storytelling gets erased. Texas Monthly ridiculed it, critics tore it apart, and the "it was all a dream" gimmick was officially loose in the wild, ready to be borrowed and abused for decades to come. Number 5. Angel. What Happened to Angel is a cautionary tale about forcing a network to make a decision before it's ready. By early 2004, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer spin-off was in its 5th season and actually gaining ground, averaging 3.97 million viewers compared to Season 4's 3.7 million, which worked out to a 7% year-over-year increase. Creator Joss Whedon wanted certainty for his writing staff, so he pushed the WB's head of entertainment, Jordan Levin, to commit to a 6th season early. Levin canceled the show instead. Producer David Fury later explained that Whedon had forced the network's hand, and when forced, Levin chose cancellation. Fury added that he was certain Angel would have been renewed if Whedon had simply waited. Valentine's Day of 2004 brought the official announcement. Around 8 weeks remained to retool everything. Season 6 plans, including Illyria evolving to become more like Fred plus the return of Willow and Oz as regulars, were scrapped overnight. Wesley's death scene, performed by Alexis Denisoff in Amy Acker's arms, only existed because the show was ending, and Whedon's reasoning was blunt. If you're going to go out hard. The finale closed with the surviving heroes charging into an impossible battle against an army of demons. Fans kept calling it a cliffhanger, and Whedon kept pushing back, insisting it was the definitive statement because choosing to keep fighting was the point. Sarah Michelle Gellar offered to appear, but Whedon turned her down because he wanted to end the show with the characters who had been in the trenches together. A canonical comic series picked up the story in November of 2007, but on screen, that dark alley was the end. Number 4. Twin Peaks. This is the rare case where the person responsible for changing a show's ending went on record years later and admitted it was a mistake. David Lynch and Mark Frost built Twin Peaks around one question: who killed Laura Palmer? And they never planned to answer it, not in Season 2, not in Season 3. The mystery was supposed to hang over the show for years. When ratings dipped in the second season, ABC panicked and demanded the reveal. Confirmation came from Bob Iger himself, the future CEO of the Walt Disney Company. His 2019 memoir and a corresponding NPR interview laid out the standoff. Lynch argued that solving the murder would destroy the show because audiences would have no reason to return, and Iger, then an ABC executive, argued the opposite. In his own telling, he prevailed. It wasn't easy, and the series failed. That is an extraordinary public admission from a media titan, accepting personal responsibility for breaking one of the most innovative shows ever made. Fallout from that decision shaped the finale directly. Mark Frost, Harley Peyton, and Robert Engels wrote episode 29, and Lynch read their draft and found the Red Room sequences, in his own words, completely and totally wrong. Massive portions got rewritten by Lynch himself, who added the Log Lady, the Palmer family, and other characters while cutting several that the original writers had included. Cooper smashing his head into the bathroom mirror while Bob's face laughs back was entirely Lynch's invention, not part of the original draft at all. One more detail worth knowing. Before ABC picked up the series, Lynch shot a separate European ending for a potential foreign theatrical release, a complete resolution where the murder is solved in a hospital basement. When the show landed its pickup, Lynch loved that footage so much he repurposed it as Cooper's dream sequence, which accidentally created the Red Room, the show's most iconic visual element, born entirely from what was supposed to be a contingency plan. Number 3. Cheers. Most shows film one ending and hope for the best. Cheers filmed 3 and kept one hidden for over a decade. The crisis arrived with the Season 5 finale in 1987, an episode called I Do Adieu that would write Shelley Long out of the series. Long hadn't fully committed to leaving, which meant the producers needed to prepare for every scenario, so they shot 3 separate endings. One had Sam and Diane actually getting married, another had Diane leaving to pursue a publishing career, and a mysterious third version existed that the producers refused to describe to anyone. That married version stayed locked in a vault for 11 years and didn't air publicly until May 27th of 1998 as part of a Fox and Paley Center special. For all that time, a completely different resolution to one of television's most famous love stories sat on a shelf collecting dust. One for the road, the actual series finale, on May 20th of 1993, pulling in 42.4 million households and trailing only MASH among scripted finales. Director James Burrows, looking back years later, offered one of the most quietly honest assessments any producer has given about a TV couple, saying simply that Sam and Diane were not the right person for one another. And that's what made them great. Even ending the show briefly came into question. Burrows admitted the creative team discussed continuing Cheers without Ted Danson, but said the conversation lasted about half an hour, maybe an hour, before they dropped it. Co-creator Glenn Charles summed up their goal as wanting to round off Sam's story somehow and find some closure for the character. Those 3 alternate endings from 1987 weren't a logistical hedge so much as the writers being genuinely unable to decide what truth about Sam and Diane they were willing to put on screen. Number 2. The It Was All a Dream double feature, St. Elsewhere and Newhart. These 2 finales are permanently linked, not just because they use the same device, but because in both cases the ending we remember replaced something far stranger. St. Elsewhere landed first on May 25th of 1988. The final moments revealed that the entire run of the medical drama had existed inside the imagination of Tommy Westfall, an autistic boy staring at a snow globe containing a miniature saint. Eligius Hospital. Nothing else on television had attempted anything like it. But here's the thing. Tom Fontana, who confirmed the snow globe was his idea, originally pitched something far more extreme, an apocalyptic scene set in the year 2013, where a blinding flash of light through a hospital window reveals that a nuclear bomb has detonated. NBC wouldn't pay for the visual effects, so Fontana scaled down to the snow globe, a cheaper, simpler choice that ended up being more devastating than the version it replaced. Roughly half the fan mail Fontana received after the finale was hostile. The real legacy, though, arrived years later when writer Dwayne McDuffie published a 2002 essay called 6 Degrees of St. Elsewhere on the Slush Factory website, pointing out that because St. Elsewhere characters had appeared on other shows, and those shows had their own crossovers, an absurd number of TV series technically took place inside Tommy's head. Fontana himself once joked that someone calculated about 90% of all American television existed in Tommy Westfall's mind. 2 years after St. Elsewhere, Newhart raised the bar. On May 21st of 1990, Bob Newhart's second sitcom ended with Dick Loudon getting knocked unconscious and waking up as Bob Hartley from The Bob Newhart Show, in bed next to Suzanne Pleshette, which meant the entire 8-year run of Newhart had been a dream. 29.5 million viewers watched that night, making it the #1 program of the week, and the studio audience broke into spontaneous applause the instant the old bedroom set appeared. Newhart and Pleshette nailed the scene in a single take. The origin of this ending is charming and legitimately contested. Bob Newhart has consistently credited his wife Ginny, saying she suggested the dream sequence idea at the Christmas party after he mentioned the show was likely ending due to CBS schedule changes and cost battles with production company MTM. What complicates that story is a 1995 letter to Entertainment Weekly from the show's credited writers Mark Egan, Mark Solomon, and Bob Benditson, who explicitly pushed back, stating that Ginny had no connection with the show and that they wrote and produced the Emmy-nominated script. Both versions can coexist, with Ginny planting the seed and the writers growing it into something that actually worked on screen. A layer of deliberate misdirection protected the real ending. The producers leaked a fake finale to the tabloids involving Dick going to heaven and meeting God, played by either George Burns or George C. Scott, depending on which outlet reported it. Pleshette was physically hidden from the studio audience until the curtain pulled aside, and nobody in that room saw it coming. Number 1. Quantum Leap. Everything about this story is worth telling, from the heartbreaking finale itself, to the misspelled title card, to the fact that actual lost footage surfaced on Reddit in 2019 after a fan purchased old production negatives off eBay. Mirror Image, Quantum Leap's final episode, aired on NBC on May 5th of 1993. Creator Donald Bellisario wrote it, and the whole thing was personal. Bruce McGill played the bartender named Al, but the character was modeled after Bellisario's own father, Albert. The bar was based on one his father owned in Pennsylvania, and Bellisario himself showed up on screen as a minor. Approximately 13 million households tuned in that night. What made this episode unusual was that Bellisario designed it to serve double duty, functioning as either a series finale or a setup for season 6, because when cameras rolled, the show's fate was genuinely uncertain. NBC's cancellation arrived as a surprise, and that's when somebody made the decision that would haunt fans for decades. A title card was added after the cancellation became official. Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home. 5 words that turned an ambiguous, open ending into a permanent goodbye, and whoever typed them misspelled the character's last name, using 1 T instead of 2. That card was a late addition, tacked on after the news came down from the network. What could have been a hopeful pause became one of the bleakest send-offs in television history. An alternate ending existed, though, filmed on March 3rd of 1993, roughly 2 months before broadcast. In that version, Al Calavikshi finds Beth and tells her that wherever Sam is, he's still himself, and that they'll begin searching in the morning, but it will take months, and by then Sam will have leaped again. Beth reassures him that he'll find Sam because that's what friends are for. Warm, hopeful, and the exact opposite of never returned home. That footage was considered lost for over 25 years. What changed everything was a YouTuber named Allison Pregler, who in February of 2018 purchased photographer Fred Subbins' behind-the-scenes production negatives on eBay, actual photographs from the alternate ending shoot. She posted them online, and the Quantum Leap fan community went into overdrive. The real bombshell landed on May 29th of 2019, when a Reddit user uploaded actual video footage of the alternate ending to the Lost Media subreddit. For the first time in 26 years, fans could see what Bellisario had originally shot. Scott Bakula confirmed the footage was real, telling an interviewer he remembered shooting different endings so Bellisario could adjust depending on whether the show was renewed. and that they wrapped before anyone knew the answer. Co-executive producer Deborah Pratt, who also voiced Ziggy, offered a different take, recalling that she'd told Belisario if Sam comes home, the show is over, but if he stays out there, it goes on forever. Somewhere on an eBay listing, in a box of aging negatives, a kinder ending waited a quarter of a century to be found. That might be the most quantum leap thing that has ever happened. Conclusion. And that wraps our list. 10 shows, 10 endings that almost went in a completely different direction and in several cases actually did in footage most of us never knew existed. What gets me about these stories is how we experience finales as if they were inevitable. Credits roll, we process what we're feeling, and somewhere in our memory, the ending hardens into the only version that could have possibly happened. None of that is true. Behind every one of these was a moment where things could have gone sideways. A wife tossing out a suggestion at a Christmas party. A network executive whose impatience killed a show's future. A photographer's negatives sitting in a box for decades until a stranger with an eBay account changed everything. The endings we grew up with are not the endings that had to happen. They're the endings that survived. And the alternate versions, the ones that were filmed, shelved, lost, found, leaked, or just talked about in interviews years later, are proof that every finale is really just the last draft in a long line of possibilities. If you stayed this long, thank you. Drop a comment and tell me which alternate ending you wish had actually aired. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because we have a lot more of these stories to tell. I'll catch you in the next one.